On to our final topic of the evening, and that is the tragic events that took place in Charlottesville in the state of Virginia here in the United States over the weekend. Violent demonstrations resulted in the death of a woman after a car went into a crowd. Initially, we had a very tepid response from President Trump, and then he bowed to pressure and he issued a more forceful response. And then a few hours ago, he was back to his initial response. Let's take a listen to his evolving responses over the last few days.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans. You had a group on one side that was bad, and you had a group on the other side that was also very violent. And nobody wants to say that, but I'll say it right now. You had a group on the other side that came charging in without a permit, and they were very, very violent.
So, Ray, we have a president here who's having a struggle. He's trying to play to his base on the one hand, and then suddenly he's been told, no, you're actually the president of the entire country. You've got to behave like a responsible politician.
Earlier in the program, you asked the question, which was, how come the president, who has won an election, is continuing to talk as though he is in campaign mode? Right. The president, the host of The Apprentice, the man who's famous for Miss America pageants, only knows one way to be. And that way to be is to play to his base, is to say the most violent, heinous things. Before we came on air, I made the point that in the 1970s, Donald Trump's organization, at that time he was not the head of it, he was one of the chief operating officers, was sued by the United States government for housing discrimination. In 1989, he took out a full-page ad calling for the murder of the Central Park Five. Those young men were later found to be exonerated. Donald Trump has a history, a personal history of racism, even throughout his family, where his father was arrested for punching a police officer during a Ku Klux Klan rally. So Donald Trump's waffling is at times, at best, at the very best, him pretending to be an American politician. But what he does, and what all of us do, are exhibit our true character. Lastly, the boxer Mike Tyson has a wonderful phrase for this. He says, well, when we think about what our plan for Donald Trump might be, what his plan might be, Mike Tyson laughs and says, everybody's got a plan until they get hit. Donald Trump was hit. Well, you didn't come out forcefully enough. You didn't come out soon enough. And so when that happened, he went back to his character. His character is one of unbridled racism. And that's what we're seeing today.
Lester, what did you make of it? I mean, surely the president is surrounded by advisors who could tell him what he's doing, I mean, how it's being seen around the world.
By the way, I think the Tyson quote is, everyone has a plan until you punch him in the face, particularly with Tyson. I wouldn't blame this on the advisors. I think his advisors are trying to do the right thing, and they seem like decent, honorable people to me. The responsibility for this lies on the president, and as much as someone would try to program him or script something, he's the one who said these things. He should have stuck with that middle statement. That was a perfectly fine statement, and it's defensible and respectable. The other things are borderline crazy and offensive and frankly, indefensible.
Afshin, to what extent does this tell us about how polarized this country is?
It certainly does tell us a lot about it. Well, let me put it this way. The country is polarized. We've seen that. We've seen that for the past 10, 15 years. But that doesn't exonerate the fact that the President of the United States, can't get probably what is the easiest thing to say, right? And maybe Ray is right. Maybe he feels this way. But even if he does feel that way, you're the President of the United States. And remember what Jeb Bush said during the campaign? Said this is a chaos candidate and he's going to be a chaos president. And this is what we're seeing. We're seeing a chaos presidency. And the front page of the Wall Street Journal today, Trump denounces racist groups. Okay, end of story. He gave his statement. He read the teleprompter. He gave the statement. And then what happens? He goes back into chaos mode. And let's not forget, Anand, that he did it at a time when he was announcing a new infrastructure plan. America needs this infrastructure. I mean, yeah. I commend you and your producers for starting the show with the world news, and not Trump's latest tweet and that sort of thing, because there is a whole world going on out there that the president needs to handle.
But I would like to make a quick point, and you alluded to what if this is how he feels, but he is the president of the United States. I think there's a needed value in folks being sincere in who and what they are. And if who and what he is a person who sympathizes with, retweets, and values the support of neo-Nazis, white supremacists, Ku Klux Klan members, I want to see and know that. I want the American public to see and know that. I want the world stage to see and know that. So we can make our decisions about how we feel about our president based off his sincere behavior and his feelings, as opposed to how he or she, if we have a woman president, were to present.
Ray, one bigger question, it's about the things we saw over the weekend. Are we going to see more of that?
Yes, yes, we will. I already have heard of several cities that have had Be Like Durham type events that they're trying to rally around, right? Because many cities beyond New Orleans that had made the news in the United States for a great deal for tearing down and taking away their Confederate monuments, many other cities have already had on their books through their city councils, through their ordinances, that they intend to take down Confederate monuments, but yet have not. Citizens are frankly unhappy. And citizens are willing to do it themselves, as we saw in the United States city of Durham, North Carolina, where folks put a rope around one of the Confederate statues and pulled, and then people came and stepped on it and spat on it, because we are a divided nation, because there's such a lack of reconciliation that the United States has not had, in ways similar to countries like South Africa that had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where the United States says, okay, we're sorry, we're moving forward.
Lester, I mean, what do you make of the fact that many states around the country right now are thinking of actually not outlawing, but putting up restrictions on who can demonstrate, what a protest constitutes?
Yeah, first of all, I agree with Ray, and this is there's a lot of underlying tension here about, and it's now being manifest in Charlottesville and these other places in violence, and that's terrible, and that shouldn't be happening. But there is a larger issue here of what to do with these Confederate statues and memorials and things like that, which is a deeper question that actually deserves some conversation. And there's genuine people of goodwill, I actually think, on both sides. I'm perfectly fine with taking down all the Confederate statues. I'm from the North. I'm from Chicago. I identify with the North, but I understand that there are reasonable people who might identify with the South, and there's a reason to keep up some of these monuments and talk about them and find a way to reconcile that doesn't involve tearing things down and fighting each other. But I think that's being superseded now by these clowns who show up in a town, and there's maybe 24 of them, and suddenly it's world news. There used to be these ridiculous neo-Nazi marches in the United States, and nobody cared, right? Everyone thought they were losers and idiots, and we would ignore them. But now it's become, because it goes right up to the White House, it becomes world news, and that's a real shame.
Okay, that's where we have to leave it, gentlemen. Thanks to all of you for joining us. That's it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Arnold Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for being with us.